Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of The Hard Compound, the first of 2023. So happy new year to all of you tuning in and to all of you watching. For those of you who don't know, my name is Rich, and I run and operate The Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport, and we try and cover as much motorsport as we can, from open wheels to touring cars to NASCAR, bikes, on-road, off-road, and everything in between. And we do that in the form of race reviews, race previews, throwbacks, birthdays, and all that kind of a thing. And of course, any breaking news and just any pictures of cars and bikes that we want to post about, really. So lots of good motorsport stuff going on, and it's all on our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube channels. Search for The Hard Compound on any of those four. And come and give us a follow and come and join all the motorsport goodness. As you might have noticed, we also do live interviews, which are automatically recorded on our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So if you want to go back and rewatch them, then you can. They're in the video section on our Facebook page, and they're just sitting nicely there for you on YouTube. If you have any comments, do put them in the comment section. We'll see them in real time, and we'll try and work them into the chat. Just to give you a quick rundown of some of the guests we've had many guests over the last 2 years or so. From the F1, IndyCar, and sports car world, we've spoken to the likes of Mr. Mario Andretti and Jackie Ickx. Absolute privilege to have spoken with them. We've spoken with the likes of Mr. Derek Warwick, with Mark Blundell, Mika Salo, Emanuele Pirro, David Brabham, Alex Caffey, Carl Wendling, Ari Leyendijk, Danny Sullivan, Willie T. Rids, Will Power, Colton Herter, Brian Herter, excuse me. We've spoken with Alonso Jr. We've spoken with broadcasting legend Paul Page. And from the world of touring cars, we've spoken with the likes of Frank Sittner, with Mr. Rob Gravitt, Matt Neal, John Clennon, Steve Sopo, Rickard Rydell, Andy Prio, many people from the world of touring cars. Most recently, Ivan Muller and Jason Plato. Absolutely fantastic. We've also spoken, not to split genders here, we've spoken with some top females from within the motorsport industry. We've spoken with the current mini challenge driver, Lydia Walmsley, excuse me. We've spoken with broadcaster and journalist and media mogul, I guess, Miss Louise Goodman. We've spoken with Emily Linscott, with Lynn St. James, with Natalie Decker. And we've spoken with a young Irish racer called Kales Cole, who is up and coming in the F1000 series. And she is mentored by Sarah Moore, who has also joined us who was a current W Series driver, which kind of links us very nicely to this evening's guest, or this afternoon's guest, depending on where you are tuning in from. Former W Series racer, has raced on a number of the open wheel series on the Road to Indy ladder, and will be racing in the Porsche Carrera Cup North America with Kelly Moss Racing in 2023. We're going to bring her in right now, so please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Miss Sabré Cook.
Hi everyone.
And here we are. Sabré, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm okay. Much better now. I've got my coffee at the end of a busy day.
I don't know how you're going to sleep after drinking that, though.
It's quite odd. I'm one of these people where, they say that you shouldn't eat cheese and you shouldn't have coffee before bed. And I'm one of it doesn't really apply. Like a nice cheese sandwich and a cup of coffee before bed, and I'm fine. It's very odd. I've always been told I'm backwards, so who knows? Just want to very quickly want to say hello to everyone in the comment section tuning in. Andrew Dalton, Thomas Day, John Kane, Mark Wagstaff, and others. Thank you for joining us. Do put some comments in, and we will work them into the chat. Firstly, Sabré, thank you very, very much for coming on and having a chat. I know it's the middle of a Sunday, and you might have other things to do, so thank you very much for coming on and having a chat. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah, happy to come on.
Excellent. All right. Obviously, we're going to have a run through your career and future plans and all other kinds of motorsport stuff in between. But if I may, I would like to sort of start right back at the start. You're from a relatively small town in Colorado. It didn't strike me as being the place where a racing driver would initially come from. It looks like a lovely place, but how did you first get involved in the world of motorsport?
So my dad, even though there's no like car racing around where I grew up, it's quite often there's motorcycle riding and racing. So my dad, born and raised here as well, and he went along to become a professional motocross, supercross rider. And then obviously when he had children, he and my mom did not want us racing motorcycles. So then we got into karting, and then I grew up running around the family karting track that is the photo actually behind me. And so that was my childhood.
Wow. I mean, it's amazing how many people start on like two wheels. I mean, I mentioned in the intro we spoke to like Jackie Hicks, obviously an absolute legend of all
Yeah.
motorsport, really, and like, he started on bikes as well. And again, it was against like the wishes of parents who had done it in the past and things like that. It's amazing when you know it's okay for them to do it, but not for the kids.
Yeah, exactly. I do kind of thank my dad for it though, and for my mom for kind of encouraging me to go with 4 instead of 2, because I think I would have probably had a lot more injuries and a lot more surgeries at this point. So, in some ways, I am very thankful.
Yes, I must admit, my father was, is very much into bike racing. He had a bike when he was young, and he came off on a road, and the bike went under a large lorry. He didn't, and he thought that's enough. But given that we've now spoken with a number of bikers on here as well from the British Superbike and World Superbike Championships, definitely safer on 4 wheels. Some of the stories, I mean, like you mentioned injury. I mean, we'll come to that. The one that you've had recently shortly, but it's always best to minimize them, I think. And
Yeah.
being on a bike isn't going to do that, is it?
Yeah, it's not really if you crash, it's when. So
Yeah. And it's also a case of not if you get hurt, it's when you get hurt as well. It's yes, yeah. We spoke to a chap who spent a few weeks in a medically induced coma in 2021 after he came off at Brands Hatch here, and yeah, huge respect for those guys. But yeah, but no, we obviously we chose 4 wheels. When did you decide that you wanted to really give it a go, like properly? Because as you said, you had the family-owned kart track at home. When did you? I mean, obviously you spent many hours, I'm sure, going around there. When did you decide to sort of step it up a bit?
About when I was 10 years old, I had like basically like a junkie cart that was like a hand me down from one of my cousins, and it couldn't really win the class I was racing in anyways, and I wasn't taking it as very seriously. And then I remember getting teased by one of the boys in my class, like, you're slow, you're never gonna beat me or win or anything. And then I just decided that I didn't like that very much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to my parents and I was like, I was like, I think I can win. And I was obviously in tears crying because I was so upset.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay. And then they actually, for Christmas, I remember I did end up getting a new cart. And then I went out and won the next race by 10 seconds. So it was kind of like, I just decided that was kind of the fire that I needed to ignite that competitiveness inside me. And yeah, haven't looked back since.
I was just going to use the word fire because, I mean, that's one thing you don't do to a competitive person is tell them they're no good.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Wow. What did you did you say anything to that person after you won that race? Did you did you see them or did you not have to?
We actually ended up racing together for years afterwards, and
Right.
I think it just absolutely bugged him so much that I would beat him. So
Good. Yes, excellent. No, we like that. And obviously, I mean, and I guess winning it obviously gives you confidence, and I think some people are happy just to sort of win once or twice, but I'm guessing you're not the kind of person to just say, oh well, I've done that. I guess you kind of want more, and it just again, as you say, lights that fire for you.
yeah, you always want to be learning, you always want to be growing, and I think like highly competitive and like high performance people, like that's what we thrive on, like that's what fulfills us. So I don't think that we're ever like, oh yeah, I've won enough, because if it's an opportunity for us to be challenged and continue to grow, I think we'll always obviously continue down that road.
Yeah, absolutely, and that obviously shows with your sort of progress through, like, through various karting series. I guess. I mean, I guess the goal was always to reach the next step, and then the next step, and the next level. I must admit, I've done some research. I couldn't find much about your karting sort of successes and wins and stuff. You can find a lot out on the internet, but I couldn't find that. I mean, I'm guessing you had successes in various championships, race wins, and titles and things on your way up through.
Yeah, so I won the SCUSA National Championship. So I was the first woman to do that, first one to hold a pro license. Then I won the Challenge of the Americas as well in the class we called DD2. I won Shifter Elite, which is like the pro shifter category, in 2016 as well. And then I won 3 tag world championships from the ages of 13 to 16. Wow. So it was like, I think that wasn't as recorded as much like today. It's much easier to find things online, but like the whole racing driver database, like the websites that exist now, didn't when I was younger. So I had an awesome karting career, and unfortunately got stuck karting too long just because of financial restrictions. But I'm really thankful for the time that I did have karting.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've spoken to so many people, and those who didn't start in on bikes, pretty much they all started in karts at different ages, and they've all said that, one, it's getting more expensive these days to go karting. Some of the figures that were being thrown out. I mean, we spoke with like Terry Fullerton on here, who's like the man over here when it comes to karting, Ayrton Senna's big rival and all that. And he said that he feels bad charging what he has to charge for karts. Yeah. Just to make a living. It's just because it's got so expensive. But they also said that it was absolutely worth it because it just teaches you how to race properly and how to control, how to control a kart and a car, and it stands you in good stead. And everyone has loved their time, and they always love it when they go back to karting. I mean, you've been karting yesterday, and I guess you loved it just as much as racing.
Yeah, it's always a challenge, and it's always going to be something that I'll always go back to because it's my roots. It's what I spent the majority of my life to this point doing. So it's just a great exercise, great training tool to always go back to.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done it a few times. I'm not bad, but I'm never going to be a racer. It's not going to happen. But and you mentioned about the funding side of things. I mean, that's going to come up quite often, and it does in all the discussions we have. Obviously, you always wanted to make the step up into cars, but it just wasn't possible. And I mean, from over on this side of the pond, we've always said that there's too many routes into too many different formulas over here. But there's the Road to Indy kind of route that you guys have over there, which I think is absolutely brilliant. Were you always like aiming to get onto that at some point? Was that always?
Yeah. Once I knew what it was, like before Drive to Survive, right? Like in the US, like formula car racing is not, I mean, the IndyCar back in like the 90s and the early 2000s was like epic. But since then it died away. It's coming back now, but it wasn't like a known thing. And like my dad obviously knew very much about like the bike world, but as far as like anything with 4 wheels, it was unknown. And so I didn't really learn about Formula One until I was probably like 15, 16.
Right.
And then, so I discovered it and then started, really getting into it and like learning all about it. And then obviously seeing how do you get to the top and looking at the Road to Indy, because that's the best option for, us US racers that are here without having to go outside the US and race in formula cars. So that was an easy thing to pick. And there's a lot of scholarships that will kind of try to help you start to get there from karting, but it's still incredibly hard to make that jump.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've always said that the road. I mean, that's going to be controversial. I've always preferred IndyCar to F1 ever since I was 7, and I'm going to give her my age here. But it was 1988. I watched the Indy 500, and I was 7, and I'd watched a bit of F1 before that, and I thought, in the Indy 500, it was like, oh my God, what is this? This looks absolutely awesome. And I just think it's great that there's a route there. Okay, it's still difficult, but if you can get into this series and you win it, it's subsidised or part subsidised as a scholarship to the next level, and so on and so forth. I would love to see that in F1, but it's obviously so difficult with it being a global series, isn't it? I mean, you can't have just from one country, but I just think you guys have got it right over there. I think it's
the scholarships
the best way.
definitely help, but the only issue is in order to actually get into the Road to Indy and then do well in the Road to Indy, you have to invest probably a minimum of $350,000 to do a full season.
Wow.
And also do the full season with a good team and have the testing to do well. So it's not like you can go in with the worst team on a shoestring budget and do a few races and make it. So it's like it's a better like path, right, that it has the scholarship, but even to get to the point of earning the scholarship, you have to have so much financial backing just to position yourself.
Yeah. And that seems to be an issue across the globe, whether it be here or, we've got one of the W Series racers. She's just been out racing in India, and there's been a few others who've been all over the place, and it's a similar kind of thing. There's still money involved, of course there is. But you ended up going through the national championship runoffs in 2017. How did that come about? Because you went straight there. Was it straight there from karting?
Yeah, I did. I got put in SCCA like the first year from out of karts into cars, and did it in what we call a Formula Enterprise car. Is like it's like faster than like an F1600 car, but not as fast as like now they're kind of comparable to an F4, but they're much lighter and they're not like a carbon fiber monocoque. It's still a tube frame. So it's a bit different. I'm questionable if the front wing actually does anything, but it was a good thing to learn in. And I drove like a Spec Racer Ford as well, which looked like boats on wheels.
I kind of want to find that now. I want to find.
They look strange. Like I guess they look. I'm trying to think of something that's comparable. Like, the old like Can-Am cars, how they're the full bodies, like really big, bulky bodies. Yeah. They're kind of look-ish like that, but they're more like they've got like a smoother wing shape to the body. And you're sat in the center. So it's like a formula car, but with this like massive square chassis and just like very heavy and slow with this like big body over them.
I'm gonna have to find some of those. They sound kind of cool. They're kind
of fun. Like, and it's all H pattern as well. They're changing them now, but it's you've got like so much room in the cockpit. Like I could have fit probably two of me side by side. Oh, really? It's quite large.
Wow, kind of cool. But how did you find it moving to? I mean, obviously these cars have got, you mentioned the front wing. They're like wing cars, like downforce and all that, and you'd never experienced it before. I guess, or certainly not much. How did when you really, put your foot on the noisy pedal and went for it, and the downforce kicked in? How different is it to drive something like that when you've been so used to driving carts, which slip and slide and go sideways and all that?
Yeah, it was definitely like it was a mental thing to get over because if you go a certain speed, you're not going to get the tires up to temp and the aero is not going to be as effective. But once you finally take that leap of faith, I remember just having to be like, I kind of like held my breath because the track I remember like finally grasping the concept was at Road America here in the US. It's a very fast, high speed track. Fantastic track. Just being like, you just kind of had to like, I kind of held my breath and just was like, all right, I just have to trust that it's going to stick. And the faster you go, the more aero you have. And so it was just like such a weird thing in your mind because like with karting, you obviously feel that limit and you're like, okay, I'm at the limit. Like I can't go anymore. But with this, it's like, no, you've got to just take a leap of faith and go past what you think the limit is for the aero to fully activate. So it was hard to get past at first.
So like trust the science and the physics and everything and go for it. Try and bring yourself to do it. Sounds very cool. Very cool. I also say hello just a comment there. We've got like Michael Crease, who's a British touring car championship driver. We love him. Everyone loves him. And he says, fun fact, I bought Sabre Cook's W Series race suit in an auction this year at Buxton.
That's awesome.
I think we're going to have to see photos, aren't we? We're going to have to get some photos of that put online, Creasy. So, but no, very cool. Excellent. What a cool thing to have. We have to try and get it signed.
I think it should already be signed.
I think it probably is signed.
I think we signed all of, like, whenever we always sign the suits before we gave them away. So it should be signed.
Yeah, pretty cool. Excellent. So like Creasy, can you let us know if it fits? Thank you. Maybe, who knows? But yeah, just going back to the and did you just get invited along to it?
Oh, I think my internet cut out. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can indeed. I've just had something flash up, but it's gone now. Sorry, I can repeat that if need be. The runoffs at Indianapolis, obviously fantastic circuit. Did you just get an invite to it? I think we may have lost you very briefly. Just 1 second. We will come back. The internet I think it has frozen, but we're going to be back in a minute. I'm going to vamp. Michael Crease, it's signed and it fits. He's a 9-year-old. Excellent. It's very cool. That's a nice one. Nice one to go racing in. And what have we got here? Cook Racing UK on YouTube. You can still hear me. That's great. Okay, I think the issue might be at Sabre's end, but we'll see and we'll wait. Sabre, if you can still hear us, if you want to hit refresh, the link still works. So if you want to hit refresh and come back, that's absolutely fine. No problem at all. Mark Wagstaff, has Sabre ever driven a UK circuit? If so, what was the experience like? We're going to come to that. I know for a fact she's driven at least one. And we're going to come to that very soon. But these are the joys of live chat, boys and girls. This happens sometimes, especially when we're live with Colorado, which is very cool. We've got a few miles in between us and Sabre, so hopefully she'll come back soon. Just to let you know, we have got another live chat next midweek. The what would that be? 23rd, 4th-ish, I think. No, it's not. It's the 15th. No, it's not. Oh, I don't know. I'm losing track. 21st, 22nd of January, we've got a live chat. In fact, we're live every week, by my reckoning, until early March. So we've got plenty to keep us entertained. There we are. I think the internet has come back. There we are. We're all good. We had a freeze.
Sorry, I'm in rural Colorado, and sometimes we don't have great service.
No, it's absolutely fine. I was just saying, this is the joys of live streaming. So you don't get this on these pre-recorded podcasts. This is real.
Yeah.
No problem. Michael Crease did respond. He said that it fits his 9-year-old. He's got a 9-year-old and it fits. And so.
How tall is your 9-year-old?
I don't know. Mike, Mr. Crease, can you answer that question? But she said that he did say that you must be tiny. So
I mean, I am like 5'6". I don't know. That's like 167, 168.
Kind of normal, yeah.
Yeah. That's normal.
Odd. Very odd. Hopefully we'll get the answer soon. No, cool. I've actually got some bike leathers here that I won in a competition. I won, it was to raise some funds for the guy who fell off and was in the coma and everything. And I won. And I've put them on and no. I mean, he's a similar build to me, but you can't stand up in them because obviously bike leathers, you just hunched over and yeah, you wouldn't want to do any star jumps, I'll put it that way. So yeah, sorry, we're going about the runoffs at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Fantastic place. I finally got there last year for the 500 after many years of wanting to go. Were you just invited along just because of through people you knew, or was it from?
No, so you have to finish a certain number of, they call them super tour races.
Right.
So did that in the Formula Enterprise, was sponsored by Apple Motorsports, Apple Automotive. So they paid for me to do that, and then also sponsored the runoffs race as well.
Right.
So I ran it in the FE as well as their Spec Racer Ford that has like it's kind of funny because the logo is like an angry apple, and it's very unique. So people tend to not forget it.
That's cool. I've got to find a picture of this car and a picture of the angry apple. There's going to be some googling going on. That's
I'll
cool.
send it to you.
Oh yes, please do. That'd be excellent. So you went there and you ran. I've got here. You finished. Was it ninth? Yes, ninth in the Formula Enterprise series. I mean, I guess did that get you noticed from some people who were there on
Actually, just being entered into like a Formula Car racing series that year allowed me to be eligible for the Team USA scholarship to compete for that. So, which is awesome because Jeremy Shaw runs it, and he'd seen my success in karting, so he's like, if you can just get into a race car that's a Formula car, like, we want you to be a part of it. And so then I was like, okay. So then I managed to pull it off in 2017 to get in a car for the first time, and was invited to Team USA scholarship. And we actually had like a secondary part of our evaluation the same week as the runoffs. So like one of the days we had qualifying, I qualified in one car and then drove to Illinois to test in another car, a USF 2000 car for the Team USA scholarship shootout, and then drove back. I had to miss my qualifying for the other car, and then went and raced the Formula Enterprise like the day after. So it was a bit funny because it was like jumping back and forth.
You were backwards and forwards up from, was it Indianapolis? Yep. Yeah. So we actually stayed in Chicago, so I know that. I know that drive past Lafayette and all that. Yeah.
It's not a great drive.
No, it was pretty cool for us the first hour. We're thinking, yeah, on the road in the USA road trip, but then you think,
you're like, yeah, okay, it's a lot of flat cornfields.
I've like seen these fields before, yeah. So you're going backwards and forwards racing these two cars, but you got into just some partial seasons part seasons, but in both the F4 US Championship and USF 2000. How come it was just a part season? Was it due to funding, or was it just a trial thing? Or
yeah, it's incredibly expensive. Like the team that I did it with was brand new in both series that year, which was great because they obviously offered me a deal, and so then I got to at least do a few races. But I mean, it was like, if I could go back now and advise my younger self, I would have probably like found some way to raise more money and have a more successful go at it, because I was like, I had zero testing, and I was just like, I can't sell the tests to sponsors, right? So like, I'm just trying to sell enough to get to the race, and then I'm like, I'll just figure it out in the race. Like, and no coach. Like, I was like one of those people that had a bare helmet. Like, I couldn't afford to paint my helmet. Like, it was just black, blank suit that did not fit like at all. It looked like a homeless person. And I was like, yeah, I just was like, whatever I can do to like get in the race. And then I realized now that was not the way to go about it, but I did it, and it eventually kind of paid off, but I would have gone about it differently.
It's the joy of hindsight, isn't it? Hindsight's a wonderful thing. But I mean, I think like fair play for just going at it and going for it, and like to compete in two different series as well. Obviously takes some doing. I guess the cars are quite different. And you mentioned about the USF4. There's a young lady from the States called Emily Linscott, who you may have heard of, but I'm not sure. She did some crowdfunding and things, and some of the figures that were being thrown around in there were crazy. So can understand how it might be a struggle. Oh, I think we might have dropped out again. It's okay. It's no problem. I think the internet might have dropped at Sabre's end again. It seems to be okay at my end. But we're going to get through. It's okay. It's all good. Again, if you want to hit refresh, please do. No problem. It's going to go again. Hey, hang on. Oh, hey, this is good.
Sorry.
No, don't worry. We spoke to someone before and it dropped out about every 30 seconds. That's fine.
Oh, man.
Yeah. No, it's cool. No problem at all. Yeah, I was just mentioned about we had a young lady from the UK called Emily Linscott, who you may or may not have heard of, who did some crowdfunding. She got on board with Pepper Man, and she did the
Mhm.
USF4. And some of the figures that were being thrown
Yeah.
around were incredible. Um, I mean,
It yeah.
how many races did you get to do in USF4? Was it
I did 4, and
four?
then I did, 2 in F4.
Okay, right. So they were, but I mean, and again, I guess these were a step up from the car you'd raced in the runoffs, and
Mhm.
I mean, it's a pretty sharp learning curve. I mean, I guess were these your first races in like Formula cars?
Well, other than the Formula E that I raced, or the FE is what we call it in this in SCCA. So I'd raced those, but not like that was the first time in like the Road to Indy was the USF 2000 cars.
Wow, they're pretty. You know, they're pretty powerful cars. I mean,
They're
it's
they're
quite a
really quick. So I'm really glad that they've created the USF juniors now because it was too big of a jump in my opinion for like a lot of kids that are like
right.
15, 16 coming from karts and then getting into these. So it's yeah, it's a good that they have another step now.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to ease them in a bit. And I guess you didn't have any expectations going into the season. It was just a case of how many races you can get into, getting some experience, learning,
Yeah.
and just learning the cars, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, that was really all I could do is just try and do the best that I could with what I had and learn as much as I possibly could. But yeah, it was I'll admit it wasn't the most enjoyable experience just because I was not set up for success. And as a competitive person, being put in that is not always a fun thing.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I guess you've got one eye on like the bigger picture, on the longer term, and how can I do the next season, or or can I do better next time out? Get some
Or
people
how can I
involved.
make it to the next race? Like
That's the
I
first
I
one.
got yeah, like I got crashed into at Mid Ohio, and because of that, I couldn't do any more races. So it was just like
Yeah.
I couldn't crash the car at all. Otherwise, yeah,
There was no money to get it, to get it back on the road and everything. Wow. I mean, you mentioned about Road America and Mid Ohio. I mean, as I said, I'm a big fan of IndyCar. Those are two of my favorite circuits. Absolutely brilliant. I've always said if they had some investment, then F1 could easily go to either of those, just because of the
yeah.
circuit. Perhaps not the facilities, but what are they like to drive? Are they two of your favorite ones?
Road America and which one?
Mid Ohio, which
Mid
is
Ohio.
that's
Yeah, I
that's
actually kind of like Mid Ohio more.
okay.
Just like I don't know if it's well, it's shorter than Road America, so like I guess I enjoy like that you can get more laps, but it's like there's some of the way that the corners are just very different. Like they're like lots of elevation changes. Like you can't really see through some of them, so you're just like cresting and like so I just like I don't know, I like the rhythm of it more. I feel like it's more of a technical track and I do like Road America. Like it's absolutely amazing to race there. It's beautiful. Like just even like being on the grounds is gorgeous. But sometimes I like the high speed corners, but I guess I just like the rhythm more of Mid Ohio.
Yeah, and the technical side. See, that's a proper racer right there. It's not just about going as fast as you can. You need some technical stuff. No, love it, love that. I mean, did you have any plans to get back into those series for what would have been 2019? Were you thinking maybe I can get some sponsorship on board, speak to some people, come back? Maybe was that
Yeah,
the thought process?
there were thoughts about it, but I also ran into the issue of I moved to the UK. So then going back just to race in the Road to Indy would have been um, very expensive, and also
Yeah,
work would not have given me the time to do that and W Series.
sure, sure. I mean, where in the UK were you based? Where did you come to this beautiful island of ours?
I lived in the lovely Milton Keynes.
Oh, beautiful.
It was an experience, and then I moved and lived in this
Ah,
a house like
oh, hang on. I think, oh, you might have frozen very briefly. Hang on. Oh, no, we're kind of there. Hang on. Oh, there we are. We're back. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, I put you mentioned Bicester. That's just up the road from me. It's not a million miles away from where we are here. So that's kind of cool. Oh no, we're definitely gone again. Oh my goodness. Sorry, folks. Hi. Oh yes, we've just about got you.
And
There we are. Oh no, hang on. Someone's saying it's frozen. Oh my goodness. We're back. Are we? Dancing eyebrows time. Jack Vincent said it's frozen. Folks, if you can let us know. We can blame the British weather for this. The weather's not great here. It's a bit wet. All right. 3 for 3. We're all good. I was just saying we've got some bad weather here. So we've got some bad weather here. We'll blame it on that. No problem. So yeah, you mentioned you were up in like Bicester, which is lovely, Bicester Heritage and all that. Just up the road from here, not far away. So that's nothing against Milton Keynes, but that's a nicer place to be, I think.
yeah.
No, very cool, very cool. But Milton Keynes does have some concrete cows. They've got
Yes. Very strange.
Yeah,
But they were nice decorations, I guess, for the roundabouts.
it's lots of roundabouts. Lots of roundabouts. No, that's cool. But so obviously that was I guess that was alongside your time in the W Series, which excuse me. When were you first aware of W Series, and did you think, oh, yeah, that might be good?
There were like whispers and like rumors about this series that was possibly going to come to light the year before actually W Series came out, and then eventually W Series came of it later in 2018 is when I heard about it, and then they just requested like, will you send in your resume and fill out this application, and then from those applications is how they picked who would go to the evaluation event in Austria.
Right, cool. And I guess you didn't have to think twice when they said, "Oh, can you send it in?" Were you like, "Oh, yes"?
I'll be honest, at first I was like, I don't want to race just against girls. And,
Which I think is a popular
yeah.
standpoint, I think, yeah.
Yeah, at first I was like, I don't know about it. And then obviously, like, thankfully I had great people around me that are like, are you kidding? It's a free ride. Like if you make it, you get a race for free. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I don't need to worry too much about the stigma. It's like getting raced on some of the amazing tracks like internationally in an F3 car. So I went and did it, and it was an amazing experience. I actually really enjoyed the evaluation events, even though they were incredibly stressful. It was such like a good training, like pressure experience.
Because it was on and off track sort of stuff, wasn't it? And like a character thing as well. I mean, there's all kinds of different sort of like, there's all kinds of different levels to it, wasn't there? It wasn't just get in the car and see how you get on. There was all kinds of other things going on as well as
it was a lot. Like we did lots of like skill specific drills that we got evaluated on, like on track, as well as like stuff like we had to do this specific course, and it was like ice and snow, and like you had to drift a certain part of the course, and if you didn't drift all the way you got points deducted, and like you had like these kick plates that we would drive over, and like so it would kick you but you didn't know which side it was going on, and then you'd have to like basically like drift through these fountains and like make it through and not hit the water, and then you would have to do like a roll car where it's got those funny little shopping cart wheels on the back.
Oh yeah.
And like drive around it. And then what else did we do? We did so like a smooth driving test, and like we drove rear wheel drive cars, we drove front wheel drive cars, and then we did the race of champions type format where you knock each other out, and then we did obviously the fitness tests, and we did some like mental questionnaires, but I don't know if we were evaluated on them or not. I think it was like kind of also for them to see where everyone is at, and as well as gain data, and then for us to like kind of reflect ourselves. So yeah, there was a lot of different elements.
Wow. I mean, so it's a real all-encompassing thing, which obviously it kind of has to be, doesn't it? If you're going to make, especially with it being the first season of it all coming up, and the eyes of the world on it type thing. And you were one of the first. Was it the first 12 they selected? Were you?
Mhm.
That must have been a relief.
Yeah, I guess like in a way that well, they didn't select the first 12 in Austria. So like they cut Austria's numbers down by half, and then the rest of us went and tested in the actual F3 cars in Spain like the next month. And then from there, there was 12 of us picked the after the second day, and then the other ones were picked the third day. So like the rest of us, the 12 of us had to just sit there and watch the
Oh,
like
you're
everyone
watching.
else. And so it was kind of like a relief, I guess, to be picked sooner, but also kind of a bummer because then you lost out on the extra track time.
Yeah, I guess being in that last one would have almost been a benefit, but I guess it's nice to get through. And yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I think I would rather be the first 12 than be
yeah, sure.
stressed about it in the end.
Thoughts just popped into my head. I haven't got to name any names, but were there some people in that third day that you were thinking, "Whoa, she's my friend and we're getting on nicely, but I don't want her to get through. She's really good." Did you ever think
Uh,
about anyone?
I get not like out of the I think the ones that were obviously very good were already picked in the first 12. So there
Sure.
wasn't like someone that was in the last six to be picked that was like a very easy standout. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. But they're going to pick the best ones first, obviously. Clearly. But so obviously, when you told you were in, I mean, that's obviously very exciting, and you've got this like free ride, as you say, for the following year. I mean, is the fact that it is very minimal on cost? I mean, that's got to be a huge.
Oh, it's
It's a huge
everything.
plus for the
You
series,
pay
isn't it?
yeah, you pay for nothing. Like, everything is covered. You just have to show up with a helmet, and thankfully, like, Bell Helmets US supports me with that, and so then, like, a helmet and a Hans, and that was it. Like, that's all I needed.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, and I think it. I mean, we may as well get into this subject now. I mean, obviously, it's a complete split with W Series. I've found some people. I mean, well, you had the like dilemma in your head. Do I race against women only? But then again, it's a free ride, and I think that's just how everyone looks at it. I mean, I'm personally very pro W Series. I think any series that gives someone an opportunity to go racing, an opportunity that they may not have had, regardless of who it's against. I mean, it could be against it could be against aliens or whoever. I mean, if you're a racer, surely you want to go racing,
Mhm.
and then the rest will hopefully sort itself out afterwards. That's my standpoint. I don't. I mean, I guess you can see why there's this split when it comes to W Series.
Yeah, I completely understand because, like, I mean, I initially had the thoughts of like, well, I don't want to just race against the best girls. I just want to race against the best.
Yeah,
And I get like why people have their reservations about it. I think W Series obviously has done an amazing job about bringing light to women racing
yeah,
because so many more people know about it and so many more people realize, oh, we do need to support them just as much as we are the men.
yeah,
So I think it's done, really some fantastic things. I know, like, obviously W Series hasn't put someone in F1, but the idea of a championship only racing for 2 years and then having someone ready to go to F1 by then, what?
that's
Like, that's
exactly
not
what.
how it works. Like, you have to have a girl that has to have the same amount of resources and seat time and skill development as the men do. Think
Yeah,
about like the current ones that are top in F1. They started from a very young age racing, the highest levels of karting, tons of track time, tons of seat time. And then the same thing happened as they progressed into cars. And you can't expect to take a woman racer in W Series for 2 years with less races than the men get. We maybe get one test, two tests, and nothing else. And then all of a sudden the gap be closed and she goes off to F1. Like, it doesn't work that way.
yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, this is something that I've said. I mean, I think a lot of people have fallen into the trap of thinking, right, the sole aim of W Series is to get a female racer into F1 as soon as possible. And then when that doesn't happen, people go, "Oh, it's failed. It's not working. It's pointless. It's creating segregation. It's blah blah blah." And I think it's just had two and 3/4 seasons. I mean, it's not going to
Well,
happen
I don't
overnight.
even really count the esports races. Like,
Well, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But
yeah, I guess
we
this
had
year.
the
Yeah.
part of this year, and and I think people are I think they're missing the point of it. I think they've kind of got this idea in their head that it's just to get someone into F1, but
Well, I mean, think about how society is nowadays. Is everything is instant gratification. Nothing really like is thought out to be this, long investment. And so they expect, oh, this new shiny thing showed up and it says it's going to do this, so it better do it immediately. And then like
yeah,
people just lose interest.
and yeah, definitely. I mean, people, whether it be online or racing or just in the normal world, everyone wants, we expect things now, don't we? And
Mhm.
we don't like waiting for things. And I always say, look, we'll see what happens. And they go, no, it's not going to happen. And yeah, and obviously, we've got a lady over here called like Jade Edwards who races in the British Touring Car Championship. She's great friends with Jessica Hawkins and Abby Eaton.
Yeah.
And he said there were people were saying about, they said to Jade Edwards, "Oh, would you ever go at W Series?" And she just went, "No, it's not for me. I want to race against, as you say, you want to race against, men, women, and whoever."
Yeah.
But she says, "But I completely get why other people want to go and race in it, because it's an opportunity. It's free. It's a drive they wouldn't normally have, and it has opened up a lot of doors for a lot of people, hasn't it? Just with the
Mhm.
what's the word? With the publicity and with with the visibility that it's got a lot of races, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it may not have done everything what everyone thinks it should have, but it has done a lot of positive.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of races that have been heard of by people who wouldn't necessarily have heard of them. If it wasn't for W Series, we've got Jessica Hawkins has
Mhm.
gone on. She's in the TCR UK, the touring car, like series. We've got Esme Hawkey's gone out and done. I think she's doing DTM now, or she was most recently. And what I see, this is my last issue with WWE, is people say people say things like, I think I put a post out about Sophia Flörsch. She tested a Brabham, or she raced the Brabham in Dubai recently, 1992 Brabham F1 car, and they said, "Oh, she's a proper racer and she doesn't need W Series." I was like, "Well, I hate that to say, oh, some of these, they need W Series just so they can feel like they're competing, which is ridiculous. Some people need W Series because of the financial aspect. Everyone's different. Some people are good at business. Some people know people, know business people. They know they've got fingers in various pies, and everyone's different. And people just seem to say, oh, well, it's, if like this racer can, can succeed without going to W Series, why can't they all? Which is a ridiculously blinkered standpoint, I think, anyway.
Yeah, everybody has access to different financial means, and
Yeah.
I would rather be racing something than racing nothing at all.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to soundbite that. Racers want to race, don't they? And if it comes down to it, if you have to race against all female or all male or all 15-year-olds or whatever it might be,
Yeah,
then so
is
be
what
it.
it is.
Yeah, excellent. Love that. Right, so yes, just sorry, digressed there.
No
Um,
worries.
your experience in like W Series. I mean, how did you feel on that first qualifying session? Because it was in, or correct me if I'm wrong, was it in
Hockenheim,
Hockenheim?
right? Was it
Yeah.
Hockenheim? Yeah.
I mean, how did you
I
feel? I
was
mean,
so
was it?
nervous. Yeah, I was super nervous. Like I'd obviously never raced out. Well, I'd raced outside the US in karting, but never raced outside the US in a car before. So I was like, I've never been to this track. I have a lot to learn. And it was in the wet, I believe. I think. I think it was in the wet.
Hockenheim in the wet, good.
Yeah, it was Hockenheim in the wet and it was freezing and you're against all the Brits. And so I was like, all right, here we go. And
Wow.
so just did my best. And I just remember in the start of the first race though, I stupidly put the car back in neutral because I was like, I don't want to burn up the clutch. So I put the car back in neutral. It wouldn't go back into first gear by the time the race start happened. So
Oh,
I sat there and watched everyone else
oh,
drive away
no.
because I couldn't get the car to go into first. I had to like rock it and then restart it, and
Oh,
it
that
was miserable.
must have been soul destroying having got there and then that
Yeah.
happened. It's like, oh no. But I mean, I've got the, that first race you finished what 13th, and then given the start, take that. One thing I did want to ask about was the incident at Zolder. That we saw you had to have a drive-through penalty, which I thought was a bit harsh because it didn't seem to be your fault.
No, so what happened was this Gosha, I believe, it was one of the and they were in front of the and they were crashing and then did brakes like at least early, and I was like setting up to pass her into the corner where Gosha had tried to pass Esme, and so obviously I'm like literally this far away from her rear tail light, and she breaks 150 feet, and so yeah, and then I got the drive-through penalty for it, and so I was like, which in a 30-minute race destroys you.
It's like an age, isn't it?
It's just like, well, it is what it is. Like you're just done.
I'm so glad we got your viewpoint. Like I remember watching it, thinking, how has she got a penalty for that? I'm not going to ask what your reaction was when you were told.
Yeah,
but
I was not super stoked, but
yeah,
it was what it was.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. I remember the other one that sticks in my mind was you against our very own Sarah Moore at Misano. Fantastic circuit, anyway. Really brilliant circuit. That must have been fun. That must have been a fun battle because it looked great. It looked great.
Yeah, I think it was maybe one of the most enjoyable battles I'd had all season. Like it was a lot of fun, and I knew I could trust Sarah. Like there's certain ones that you're like, oh, I don't know, but like you always know that when you're with Sarah, she's gonna be like smart and clean. She'll race you really hard, but you know you can trust to go side by side with her.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, we spoke with Sarah last year or the year before, and she was saying that most of the grid she could trust, but yeah, she said the same thing. There's a couple that might have to ease out of this, or just get out the way, or I'm not going to ask for names, but I'm very interested to hear if it's the same. If you two are thinking of the same people,
I'm pretty sure we are.
yeah. Moving on. But yeah, I mean that was great, and you got your first points, which I guess must have felt not like a monkey off your back, but it must have felt okay.
Yeah,
good.
it did feel like that though. It really did, and my dad happened to come to that race as well, so it was cool to have him there.
Excellent. So that was what 8th, and you went one better at the Norris Ring in Germany. Place I'd like to go to. That looks like a cool track.
Yeah, I like street tracks, so like it was
same.
It was really fun.
Yeah, I'm a big pusher of street circuits. People say, oh, they're boring. They look at F1 in Monaco and think all street circuits are like that. And the issue is with the car, not the circuit, but that's a different chat. But I love street circuits, whether it be like St. Pete or at like Long Beach or in like Baku or Surfers Paradise or any of the Australian supercars circuits that they use, Townsville and all that. Because I think any racer would enjoy a street circuit, wouldn't they? Because it's the technical and bumpy and white lines everywhere, no left turn and all that.
Well, there's some left turns.
Some, yeah. I mean, it's just but all these like road, I mean, those white lines when they get wet, slippy, and yeah. I mean, I've always liked Norris Ring as a fan. Anyway, I think it's a terrific circuit. Oh, frozen. No, we're okay. Assen. This is another one I wanted to talk to you about. Because, I mean, you had some good pace there in that first year. I remember, you kind of like stood out as having all the race pace. I mean, just wondering and it's a fantastic circuit as well. I went there for MotoGP, and it's just fast. It's great. What were your sort of memories of that kind of weekend? Because you had the pace, but it didn't quite pan out, did it?
In the actual race.
Oh, hang on. That
I
one
don't know
just
if
went. That one. Yeah.
am I
Sorry.
good?
All
Can you
good.
hear me? Okay, cool.
Yeah. All good.
Yeah, I just remember I loved the track. But in the first race, I got a drive-through penalty again because when we originally did the setup lap where you go out and you stop in your grid boxes and then you go again for the actual start. Vicky Ipiria's car had an issue, so she wasn't in grid spot in front of me, and so
Right.
I had left a gap because she wasn't there.
Of course.
And then, so she wasn't there, so we assumed she wasn't starting. And so then we come around to do the next one, but she'd been released in between that. And so then she went in front of me, and I was honestly so focused on having a good start, I left the gap, but she was there. So I started one grid box farther back, which is
right.
which is not great for me, right? But because of that, the people behind me started one farther back as well.
Yeah.
So they gave me a drive-through penalty for it rather than a 2-second penalty, which is all it probably takes to move from one grid box to another. Or
especially on a start, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, I feel like, a very harsh penalty, but
Very.
you can't argue with the stewards in the middle of the race. I tried to get my engineer to plead my case, and it was what it was. So
It wasn't like you
yeah.
gained anything, was it? I mean,
No, if anything, it was worse for me because I had to
yeah,
start further back.
yeah.
So
It was almost like a natural penalty almost.
yeah, I learned my lesson though. I was so I'm always very particular on where my grid space is now.
Making sure, but I mean, that sort of penalty aside, I mean, the pace. I mean, you ended up sort of 13th, which doesn't tell the whole story. I thought of that weekend. It was pretty quick. You showed some.
Well, drive-through penalty is
progress.
35 seconds at least.
Yeah, which is what, a third of a lap at Assen or something, isn't it? It's that twisty section at the start. Yeah, not great. But the second race there, it was like the non-championship race, I guess, wasn't it? That start, I've watched it so many times, and I think she must have jumped the lights. How it was, but you didn't. I mean, we've seen it, and that was one of the most amazing starts I've seen in recent years in any series. It was just how did you do it?
I raced a lot of shifter karting, so we all do standing starts, and my dad is an amazing starter on a motocross bike, and so I would go and practice with him, and I would just do start after start after start with him, trying to get good at standing starts, and with clutch. But obviously the clutch is on the steering wheel, so it's with your hand. So with the foot, it became a new element. But I just really focused on kind of perfecting that, because if you think about, a start is one of the most advantageous parts of the race because you can make up the most positions very easily. So I just tried to really visualize and focus on having great starts, and I think I got great starts the rest of the season too. It was very noticeable because the grid was flipped, I think, if that makes sense.
Sure. But I mean, it was amazing. I mean, you just pulled out to the right and went, and we were like, even the commentator was saying, who? I think the commentator even said, "Who's that going down the inside?" And it was obviously you flying around there. One very quick thing on Assen though, towards the end of the lap, not the chicane at the end. There's a quick right-left kink just before it goes right-left, and then because I was in that grandstand at the Winter Dyke or whatever it's called, it just looks like a brilliant high-speed bit of circuit. Is that bit fun to drive?
You're talking about the really fast left-hand kink.
You've got what was it? You got that sort of right, left, right at the chicane, right at the end of the lap.
Mm-hmm. It's the one right before that.
Before that, there's a left-hander, and just before that, there's like a right-left. Thumping down there. It just looks awesome. It looks
that one's fun, but I honestly feel like the left after it is really fast, and then the chicane that's actually earlier in the lap, after the slower parts, that one is quite fun as well.
Oh yeah, out on the back, yeah, cool bit of track. Cool. Excuse me. Just want to fast forward towards the end of the season. You finished 9th at Brands Hatch. Good old Brands Hatch. It comes up in every chat we have. Someone actually said earlier on, I believe it was Mark Wagstaff asked a question. He says, have you raced in any UK circuits? I know you've raced at Brands Hatch. What were your thoughts on Brands Hatch? Because
I love it.
no pressure. Everyone has said they love it.
No, like I love it. Like if you look in past interviews, like if people ask me what my favorite tracks are, I will probably say Brands Hatch and Laguna Seca. Like it's those
Wow.
tracks.
That's good. And that's the you guys did you do the Grand Prix loop? You did the full circuit.
Yeah, the full circuit. I don't know if
Yeah.
I would enjoy the Indy circuit as much. Like
Yeah.
I like the full circuit is better.
Yeah. I always say the Indy circuit's better for spectators because you get to see more laps and stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess but the bit out the back of the circuit, obviously Paddock Hill Bend, the first right-hander, everyone just thinks it's absolutely crazy. It's like going off a cliff, isn't it?
It's pretty cool though.
I mean, yeah. Oh,
I think Brands Hatch is more similar to like a lot of American tracks because with the elevation changes and like there's not as much runoff. Like a lot of the way that most like more recent like F1 tracks is very different than a lot of the tracks in the US. Like the only one we have like that is obviously Coda.
Yeah, which is another great circuit. But yeah, you mentioned about like out at Laguna Seca. That's one that's definitely on my bucket list, and not just for the corkscrew. I mean, which is an amazing bit of track, but the whole circuit just looks fantastic. For the undulations and it's just a very long way from here.
Yes, it's a little bit of a trip.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one I'd like to. I've one that I've visited, but I've not seen any racing at is up near Napa in California, Sonoma.
Sonoma.
Yeah, very cool. Again, elevation changes and just an amazing setting. Very cool.
Yeah, it's so different than any other track I've driven. Like I've never raced there, but I was coaching earlier, or well, not last year now, and got to drive it for the first time, and it was like, it would be really fun to race on, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, it just feels different to anywhere else that I've ever been. It's just a very cool kind of feel to it. Just going back to the end of that, obviously Brands Hatch, great, love it. 2020 came along and obviously just ruined everything for everyone with COVID and everything. I mean, that must have been a real, like a real kick in the teeth, I suppose, because obviously there's no W Series but you managed to get into the Indy Pro 2000 Championship just for a handful of races, which is pretty cool. That's the third tier, isn't it, from IndyCar? It's
yeah, it's IndyCar, Indy Lights, now it's IndyCar, Indy Next, USF Pro.
Okay, yeah,
and USF 2000.
And then how did that come about? That sort of step into that series, because it's a very decent series, and I guess is it comparable to an F3 car, that kind of level?
Yeah, the Indy Pro 2000 cars are wicked fast. Like they're faster than the W Series cars. So they're like, I guess between like the regional F3 and like the FIA F3. It's a great car. They have the Cooper tires on, which is, I mean, they're softer than like the Hancooks we would run on. So really, I enjoyed the cars a lot. But yeah, only 2 races. I had a great relationship with the team because that was also the team I did the USF races for. So was able to do it on a very good deal, and I had support to just do a couple of races. A sponsor of mine actually he purchased a car, so then that way he could sell it as an investment afterwards just to make it cheaper. So lots of creative ways to get it into the seat. But I was only able to do two of the races. I got crashed into in the keyhole at Mid-Ohio at the second one, and because of the crash damage, I couldn't do the race the next week. So
yeah, a similar story to previously, but again, it's another great experience in a different car, more powerful car, and and I was just looking at some of the guys that were in that series then. I think like Hunter McElroy was in there, the brilliantly named Stingray Rob. I love his name. It's just the coolest name. Imagine that. Hello mate, what's your name? I'm telling it's Stingray. Brilliant. and who else was in there? I think like Braden Eves, and we've got like Devin DiFrancesco was obviously now an IndyCar, and it was a strong field, and you more than held your own in there. I remember,
could have been better, but for what it was, and like again, it was just jumping in for the races, so it was okay, but always want better.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick chat about the MX Cup, the Mazda MX-5 Cup. That looks a lot of fun because you did you did some racing in there. Obviously, back to the, well, was it was it like your first time racing a non-Formula car, or had you done? Oh no, because you'd done
No, I'd raced the Spec Racer Ford, which isn't a Formula car, so it was yeah.
I mean, it just looked fun. Cool cars.
Yeah, I just did the one race at Daytona, and like an MX-5 at Daytona is like you're kind of like, all right, are we through the turn yet? Like, here we go. But it was so much fun to like. They're kind of like like the Briggs and Stratton, or like the slow like go-karts that everyone races at, like the 4 cycles. It's like that, but in car form, because there's just such close racing. There's so many of them. And if you get hung out of the draft, I mean, you're just a sitting duck. So it was a lot of fun though.
Yeah. Excellent. Love that. See, and anyone who races in America talks about the draft, and Brits don't get it. They don't get how important.
No, you don't understand it until like they've been on an oval, and it just like it is unreal.
It's just that part, and as you say, and you see it even in IndyCar and everything else. If someone just gets a little out of shape and they get nudged out of that draft, they can go.
In the MX-5s, it could have been like anywhere from like 5 to 7 seconds or something like that. It was crazy.
Wow, that's per lap.
Yeah, like it was a big difference. Like maybe 2 on the low end, but like up to 5 if you had enough cars pushing. Like
that's amazing. Insane. That's amazing. That's why NASCAR always amazes me, especially on Daytona when you're like driving on that. It's just what a place. I'd love to go.
Yeah.
Just sort of just to step into 2021. Obviously, back in W Series, with the teammate, the team structure, with you with Fabian Volwen, weren't you? You with her. I guess you guys got on, you and her.
Yeah. I'm a pretty like cohesive person, so I usually get along with most people. But it was nice that Fabian and I got to be paired together. So it was fun, and we had a great support from the bunker team. So it was it was nice to be part of that.
Yeah, and it was another step forward for the series, with having teams and dedicated crews and stuff, which is great. And obviously being on the F1 support bill. I mean, wow, that must have been very exciting when you found out when that was announced.
Yeah, it was exciting. It was also, I guess, like it is cool to race on an F1 weekend, but it's also in a way not as good because you don't get as much seat time. So like our amount of track time got cut back because of that. So that was the only kind of bummer.
Yeah, it's kind of good exposure. Me setting the mouse flying. Gone again, forget it. Not sure what's going on here. It's got trapped on something, excuse me. Yes. So I guess it's good for the exposure, but perhaps not for you guys wanting to do a job on track. Unfortunately, your season never really got going, did it? Because of the injury that you sustained. Was it the very first race at Red Bull Ring?
Yeah, first race, first corner.
I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what actually happened? I mean, because the injury that you had and subsequently kept fairly quiet, it was horrendous. But what actually happened in the incident?
So I got a good start and passed like the row in front of me. And then we were going into turn 1. And obviously like everybody's like fanned out, and then it funnels and you've got those massive curbs. Unfortunately, Irina did not remember her braking point, and she like literally just pile drived into Mickey, and I was on the other side of Mickey. So
Oh,
like
right.
then basically they both crashed into me and hit me from the right side, and then I was over those big sausage curbs, like
Okay.
over and then landed.
So were you
So
already turned? So you were already turned into the. You would.
yeah, it was on like the middle. It was like it was basically like from apex off is where the contact
Right.
was.
Wow.
So yeah, it took out my like the front, my nose and my front wing. So that's I ended up pitting for a whole new front and then went back out. But yeah, I obviously the adrenaline's going at the time, and I was like, you know, down the straights, you're full throttle, obviously. And I had so much pain in my hip that I was like, I finally had to do like quick lifts off the throttle. And
Oh,
you could
really?
see it after the race. I was like, I showed my engineer, I'm like, look at this. Like,
You
I
were
don't know
blipping.
why, but I physically couldn't hold my leg down anymore because the hip was so painful. And I was like, wow, this is a really bad muscle cramp. And
Was that what you thought it was?
I literally thought, I'm like, and obviously in hindsight, like when you already have your adrenaline pumping and it's already high, to have that level of pain, probably should have realized that something was really wrong. But yeah, so I had to like just do quick lifts down the straight, trying to get that muscle to relax because I thought it was a muscle cramp.
Wow.
Finished the race, but then I couldn't walk on my right leg for like an hour and a half after the race. So I went, obviously saw the physios, and they like kind of, you know, checked me out. The physios that we have were absolutely amazing. So like, that's like one of the only reasons I was able to like somewhat stay together. And yeah, didn't realize like how bad it was because I was obviously in Europe. I wasn't home in the US to go see one of my doctors.
Cool.
And then we raced again the next weekend, and it started hurting my back like a lot. So the hip was damaged. And then obviously when one thing is damaged, you start compensating. And so then it started to come into my back, and I like started having a lot of back pain, like just going through like the fast corners, especially because that's when you're really bracing. And I was like, this something doesn't make sense. This is hurting like quite a lot. And working with the physios, like my trainer and physio, they thought like, they actually theorized, they're like, I wonder if you've torn your labrum. And then obviously didn't get to go back to the States until after like Hungaroring, which at that point I was toast. Like I couldn't even get out of the car after the race. I literally finally got out, and then just like I was in the physios for I don't know how long. And like, if this shows like how nice some of the W Series girls are, like I couldn't physically bend over and put my own shoes on. So like Isla Agren, she put my shoes on for me. And so it was after that I went back to the US, and then I did go see my doctors and went on this whole long, obviously it takes a while with the way insurance works in the US to like get the MRI approved, and then you can finally go get the MRI, and then they'll only approve one at a time. So then they would do one on my back, and then they would like a few weeks or whatever later they would finally do one on my hip.
Wow.
And so it took a while, but then eventually found out like all the damage that had been done. And then they're like, oh yeah, by the way, you need surgery, and minimum recovery time is 6 months. And so I was like, oh, well.
When did you find that out? When did they say that you need surgery?
So originally they thought that it was because of insurance. They took the MRIs of my back first because that's where I had the most of the pain. It was a lot of referred pain from the hip.
Right.
But I'd herniated a disc. I compressed 2 of them, and I had spinal canal narrowing and SI joint dysfunction. So they thought, okay, maybe this is the core of it. And they started treating that with obviously with PT and spinal injections, and that didn't completely solve the problem. And so by that time, then we'd gotten through CODA, and then they were like, let's do another MRI because obviously something else it's not just your back. So then they did another MRI, and eventually once we got the MRI back, this took like, because they tried to do just another spinal injection after the CODA race. So it was like beginning of December, I had another spinal injection, and then it didn't work. So then they did another MRI like the beginning of January or whatever it was. And then finally they told me that yeah, they're like, they looked at it and they're like, oh yeah, this is why none of it's working, is because you've torn your labrum, and you have like my femur. So your hip joint's like this and the ball sits in.
Yeah.
The femur was like no longer sitting correctly in the hip joint. So like I had a big hip impingement, which is why they had to do when they go in and they sew the labrum back together, they dislocate your femur and they grind off bone off the inside of your hip and off the ball of your femur. So the bone work takes longer. Depending on how much bone work they do, it takes longer to heal, which is why it took the 6 months.
Oh,
So it was, yeah,
oh,
not
I just got a
fantastic.
shiver then. Ow! But I mean, I said I'm not going to pretend to know what all the injuries actually are. I you know, but it's not good. I mean, it's back and hip and everything else, and I just find it amazing that you even saw out the first half of the season. You know, let alone and you saw the whole season out. This is where I said that the results don't always tell the whole story. You look at the results, you think, oh well, why shit the bed? But when you hear that, it's a miracle you were that you were in every race. I mean,
Yeah,
I huge credit to you for doing the season. I mean, unbelievable.
I really have to give a lot of credit to my physio Tracy. She was amazing. Like she treated me before and after every session. And we figured out somewhat of what worked. So she would put these massive strapping bandages that would kind of try to hold the hip and support the back.
Right,
so she would wrap around the low back, around the hips, and we would redo those every day. And so she was doing everything she possibly could to help me manage through the rest of the year. And
wow.
It was without her, I probably wouldn't have made it through the season.
Wow. Just to show the importance of the team and the people around you. I mean, incredible, absolutely incredible. Just very quick. I want to talk about the round at Kota. Just very aware of the time. Talk about the round at Kota. Obviously, it's your home circuit. Obviously, you're in pain. The season's not going the way you wanted to, but it must have still been a fantastic experience to race. There on the F1 support bill with all the stuff going on. Must have been very cool.
Yeah, no, it was awesome experience, and it was such great exposure, and it was cool to be part of that paddock and just see it. I'd raced on an F1 weekend before at Kota with the F4, but to be with it for multiple races was, it was definitely a treat to just be a part of the whole circus that is F1.
Yeah, awesome. It just put me in mind of something I saw a few weeks ago. Were you there a few weeks ago? I think I saw on your Instagram you were up the tower.
Yeah,
windswept. That is a very cool feature of Kota, isn't it?
It's the best view. You can see everything, which is really nice.
Wow. I have to try and get myself up there if I ever get to Kota. I saw there was an interview. I think it was Willie T. Ribbs who's been on here for a chat, and they said, he told me that they asked him if they could do a feature of him up there. And obviously, Willie T, he's just like, yeah, whatever, I'll take it in my stride. And he just went, nope, you're not getting me up there. He didn't.
I didn't know he didn't like heights. That's funny.
I don't know if it was the height or the wind or the stairs, or I've no idea, but he just didn't.
There is an elevator.
I was going to say there has to be, doesn't there?
There's an elevator.
Yeah, but I just don't think he fancied it. Maybe he thought his hat was going to get blown up or something. I'm not sure.
I guess it is windy up there.
Yeah, but no, very cool, very cool. So obviously going into start of last year, you've had the surgery. Obviously, you're out for the year, and you know that. I mean, did you have any plans in place for last year, or was it just a case of seeing what was going to be, obviously before the surgery?
Obviously, me trying to figure out what I needed to do with my physical recovery was kind of primary. I knew I was going to need to work on that, but I didn't realize that I was going to have to take the season off. So before I knew that, I was putting stuff in place to do things with sports cars in the US, specifically actually with Carrera Cup. So yeah, eventually that obviously came to fruition now, and I will be racing in it this year, which is awesome. But yeah, there was a year in between that I did not expect.
Yeah, I mean, it must, and obviously, you took to social media and you documented all your, all of your recovery and all the bits and pieces you had to go through. I mean, huge credit to going through it. I mean, obviously, it's a means to an end, but must have been demoralizing at times. You must have just thought, God,
Yeah, like some weeks, obviously it's not linear, right? Like nothing is ever linear. And so when I would have a week where maybe I felt like I wasn't progressing enough, or I actually would go backwards and maybe have more pain or have a bit of an issue, um, it would definitely get frustrating. That's why like I moved to Indianapolis last year as well, which perfectly matched up because some of the best orthopedic surgeons are there. The ortho Indy that takes care of the pacers are the ones that did my surgery.
right.
So like my doctor does like he did like I don't know at least like 4 of them a week. So he's just like, oh yeah, this is normal. Like so it was really lucky that I got to be there. And then I think what made a big difference for me was my PT. Like I enjoy my PT. We're actually friends now, and just having that like team around me to look forward to like on the days when I really was hurting or really didn't feel like it, knowing that they were going to be there and like guide me through it, and they were invested as much in my recovery as I was. So that part was definitely helpful.
Yeah, I guess it must have made it much easier. You know, you all sort of moving towards the same goal type thing. And obviously moving to Indianapolis, cool city. We stayed there for 3 nights around the 500. Obviously, it's buzzing around the 500.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's totally different around the 500.
You know, the monument in the middle of the town, the big, is it a fountain, big tall
Yeah.
thing? We were staying like a block
Oh
west
wow.
of that. We got lucky. In an apartment, like a condo type thing. But we went to Cincinnati for the day on the Saturday. We want to see some baseball and just see a bit of America, really. And we came back. We're like, right, get to bed, early start tomorrow. No chance. Doing burnouts and dry. It was crazy. It was
Oh,
absolutely
like
fantastic.
they were like you're talking about the events that were happening downtown?
Yeah, around that memorial, they had like car shows and people with like super nitro cars doing burnouts and just
Yeah.
car
It's a whole
enthusiasts.
like it's
It's
a whole
crazy.
event. The whole month of May is like
Yeah.
this whole show.
Yeah, it's just awesome because, and we had a bit of a laugh to ourselves because we thought if we did this in any city in England, there'd be uproar. Oh, the roads are closed. Well, what you doing? Our tax money is going to have to pay for that to be cleaned up. We just love to moan, enjoy it. But no, very cool, very cool city. Yeah. Excuse me. Again, eye on the time. You've gone through the scholarship with Kelly Moss for the Carrera and been successful. It's a great opportunity, isn't it? And huge credit to them for setting up that I don't know, that event, that kind of shootout, I suppose.
Yeah, no, it was an awesome thing to see Victoria and Andy step up and do that. And Victoria is amazing. Like she's genuinely invested on bringing women like farther. Like she's not using it as like some to check a box. She's not using it as like some media angle. Like she genuinely cares. And to find someone that genuinely cares, like love motorsports, but it's a bit chaotic sometimes. So like to find someone that actually genuinely cares is rare. And then to have a female that kind of understands things that like we go through is even more rare. So I'm really excited to be with them this next year, and it should be an awesome season.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels like it's like the perfect situation for you and her and for everyone else. And you go to some cool circuits. I did have a quick look at some of the circuits that you're going to race at. And there's some really good ones, isn't there?
Yeah, the 2023 calendar hasn't been publicly announced yet.
Oh, okay. I thought it was real. I think it might have been last year's I looked at then. But anyway, a recent one.
This last year's was really cool, but this year's is going to be absolutely amazing. Like,
okay.
I'm really excited for once it finally goes public because, we will have plenty to talk about then.
Ooh, I'm going to keep my eye open for that. That sounds good. Excellent. No, very good. And also, wish you all the best. Wish you all the best of luck with it, and congratulations on going through the process and.
Thank you.
And being the winner. Fantastic. Very cool. Right. I just want to touch about a few things kind of off track. Something that's come up recently is this F1 Academy that's been launched. I think a lot of the people who felt W Series causes segregation. I think this is a much better way to go about it. But then again, there's the money issue with the matched funding and what you can generate. I was wondering what your thoughts were on it, having raced in W Series.
Obviously, it's a similar thing to W Series. I guess it's a great thing to see that the existing teams are supporting it. It's
Yes.
good to see that F1 has a stake in it, but things like that are not going to make long term or like as effective change. Like
Yeah.
if I could say like this is the best chance that anybody would have at getting like a female into F1 is obviously the money that goes into series like that should be taken, invested in probably, let's say, 10 promising young women. And you invest it from a young age and over time, give them like all the resources that a guy would normally get, give them the right coaches and invest in their path. And more likely than not, you're going to get one or two that end up in the highest levels. But by just be creating a series that then you also have to bring funding to, we already have plenty of those.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you were saying there, I think that is certainly the way to go about it. If there's a way to get that rolling, I mean, for want of a better term, it's like invest in the person, not in the gender. If that comes across the right way, I hope it does. I mean, I don't mean it to.
No, it makes sense. Like invest in more of like a development program, like a genuine supportive development program rather than events.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go, isn't it? I mean, whether it be male or female, but obviously if you can pick up, as you say, some really promising young female racers, then obviously, and be fully focused on them rather than a broader pool of people, then it can only help, can't it? So, yeah, like that. Excuse me. Is there any? Obviously, you've got the Carrera Cup. Obviously, we don't want to give too much away about what your thought process, and we don't want to upset anyone at Caddy Moss or anything like that. But have you got any thoughts about getting back into like Formula cars, into single seater, maybe Road to Indy ladder? Is that still where you'd like to go if possible?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I'll race anything, anytime. So if I have the chance to race a Formula car again, I would absolutely take it. Once you race, the higher levels of Formula cars, it's just like a feeling that you can't replace. Like, love the 992. It's an amazing car, but it's just something special that a really fast Formula car will always be able to, like, the performance level is just. It's amazing once you experience it. So definitely will always be welcome to jump back in.
Yeah, excellent. I personally hope that Beth Peretta can expand on what she's doing in IndyCar and trickle it down, and because she's amazing as well in what she's doing. So that could be a cool route, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It was cool to work for her this year as an engineer, since I couldn't drive. So at least got to be involved in that way. And it's awesome to see what her and Simona are doing. Simona is an absolute legend, like one of the best drivers I've ever had the pleasure to work with. So I really hope that that this year is something special.
Yeah, it's certainly got all the makings of something very, very promising for them. Another little note here. I've got we've got some like ladies doing very well in the NASCAR scene and all the ones below it in the Infinity Series and Traction Guard. We've got like Natalie Decker, who we've spoken to on here, Hayley Deegan, Brittany Zamora. You said you race anything. I guess NASCAR falls under that if it ever came to it.
I mean, if the opportunity is there, I'd absolutely do it. I think it would be really fun to even try like the wing sprint cars or something on dirt oval. I'm open to honestly everything. I would totally do it.
Yeah. One thing you touch on that. One thing I really want to see in the States, I want to go out there and I want to see some of these like quarter midget type cars on the dirt. They look absolutely brilliant. I mean,
they're insane. Like,
they look awesome.
Like the amount of horsepower that some of like the wing sprint cars have, like it's like it's something crazy, like 700, 1,000, like, and they're on dirt and like you're just sideways the whole time, and it's just like it's just insane.
Wow. And they're really light, aren't they? They're really light little cars. You can almost flip them over with your hand. Yeah.
Well, they flip over all the time.
Well,
Like,
they don't take much flipping, do they? I saw there was one recently. I forget who it was, but yeah, just bounced around and got out, walked out.
Yeah.
No problem. No, cool. Right, I'm gonna just wind it down with some fun questions. Actually, no. One thing I did see, I think I saw it elsewhere. You lock your keys in your car in the hire car. I saw that
I did.
story. We've all done
Yeah.
it. We've all done it.
Yeah, that was actually my first time. I'd never locked my keys in my
Really?
car before, ever. And then, like, of course, I do it when I was at we were having a dinner with a lot of the Haggerty people. And so, like, I guess it's a good thing that I was having dinner with them because they have like the service where they're like, yes, can you just come get the keys out? And they had someone there in like 20 minutes. So
Okay.
I got lucky.
Yeah, not too bad because you left it in the back of the car, didn't you? Did you put your on the?
Yeah, I
forget
like
what it was.
took my jacket off and the keys were in the jacket pocket. Put the jacket off, put them in the trunk, close the trunk. I was like, oh no.
And as soon as you do it, you're like, oh, what have I done?
Yeah.
Never mind. No, all's well that ends well, though. All good. All good. Fun questions. Here we go. Is there one series that you'd love to have a go at? If you could pick one, if someone said, right, we're going to give you a go in this car or in this series, is there any that you'd rip their arm off for?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah, because there's loads out there, isn't there? And you said you'll race anything, so
I was like that, like anything. I don't know. I think I would really like to drive and well, I guess it's the new LMDH cars now. As well as obviously like the Indy Lights cars, I would love to make that next step and the Indy Next. I get it,
Yeah.
next step.
Indy Next.
I'm not sure about the rebrand. I don't know how I feel about the name yet, but
yeah, it feels a bit, I don't know, not tacky, but I don't know, it just feels a bit, oh, look,
Yeah.
next generation, here they come type bit. Yeah.
but they didn't even spell out next. It's NXT.
I mean, that isn't going to take up much more space, is it? On a
They were like, how much logo space do we have to put on the cars? Okay, here we go.
They've gone for like I don't know, like a bigger logo but fewer letters. It's
Yeah.
odd approach, but no, those cars would be very cool, I'm sure. What's the best race car you've ever driven? Because you've driven a few.
Ever. Sports car, hands down, the 992. Open wheel car. I guess I got to drive like literally one session, like it was like 8 laps in Formula Atlantic around VIR. That thing is insane.
Awesome. Oh, I love those. They are cool cars, aren't they? They're very cool. Excuse me. Do you have a favourite circuit? I mean, you mentioned Brands would be up there. Brands Hatcher. Do you have an absolute favourite?
I feel like it's a tie between Spa, Brands, and Laguna Seca.
Oh, yeah, I don't think anyone would disagree with that.
Like it's hard to pick one. I don't know. If I had to drive one for the rest of my life, I don't know.
Tough one, isn't it? There's so many. Actually, you mentioned Spa. Just very quickly, just want to come back to it before we ask the final question. The W Series accident at Spa. I mean, that was absolutely horrendous. I mean, obviously, it's not nice to witness, and we're glad everyone got out okay. Does it affect you the next time you go around a corner like that when you see something like that? I mean, obviously, the racer kind of takes over and you go, right, go. But do you think, does it put any doubt in your mind? Because it was awful, wasn't it? I mean,
yeah, I guess once you knew, like, they let us know, thankfully, over the radios, like, that everyone's okay.
Right.
I feel like after that, you're like, oh, okay, like, let's go. It's fine. Yeah. You do like the only thing I feel like you register like as a driver because you got to kind of keep obviously policing of your thoughts. You don't want to let anything in that's going to be disruptive. Would be like if they crash there, like we take that as feedback. Okay, be careful of the water there. Like that's what we're thinking about, not necessarily like don't crash there.
Yeah. Okay. You just sort of just store it in the back there and. I mean, obviously, the accident aside, fantastic piece of circuit, isn't it? The Eau Rouge Radion thing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Awesome. I'm very jealous that you've driven it. It's not fair.
I think you can go do touring laps there, though, right? Like, it's pretty easy to sign up for.
Yeah. And like obviously being in Europe, I mean, I shouldn't moan that it's in a different country. It's not that far away. It can
Yeah,
be
just
there in
take the
2 hours.
train or something and like.
You can fly there in an hour.
Oh
Maybe I
yeah,
should
there
do
you
that.
go.
I should do that. Work it into a holiday. Um, and are you a fan of like changing circuits? Because obviously they've changed runoffs and put things in. And I mean, I've always thought that circuits are there for a reason. And there's always going to be accidents. And on the back of an accident, obviously I'm not a racer, but I think, well, the circuit's laid out for a reason, and if you go off, there should be a penalty. Obviously, to not the extent we saw with the W
Yeah.
Series at Spa, but they talk about tightening it up and moving the runoff things back. I mean, are you a fan of that kind of thing, or is it a case of learn and don't do it again?
I mean, I think it's a combination of things. Like if like say the runoff is dangerous, or let's say like it would be a lot safer to have like this kind of tarmac on the runoff rather than it just be like grass or gravel or like those sort of things. I think, but like as far as like changing the actual layout of the track, unless it's like obviously extremely dangerous, I like the idea of keeping the characteristics because like that's what the track was made to be. It's a bit historic, like that's how it is,
Yeah.
and it's our job and our like as a racing driver, you assume that risk. But obviously, I do think that it does lay on the series shoulders to call a session when it's too dangerous of a conditions before something really bad happens, or it's the track's job to stay at a certain like maintained level, making sure everything like drainage things are taken care of, drainage channels are directed in the right areas so like certain crashes don't happen.
Which is a big issue, especially at Spa, isn't it? With and where it's located, and
Yeah,
No,
so I think if you can
yeah,
change, if you don't want to change the track, I think it's better to try and keep that, but there's a lot of other things you can do with safety measures, with safety of the car that they already have done, safety of like the safety equipment. Like there's so many things that you can just build to be safer now.
Yeah, I'm absolutely in agreement with that. Leave the track as it is. The track is there. It's been driven a million times in the past. Because of one incident, you can tweak things, but don't change the circuit. That's what I've always, excuse me, that's what I've always thought as a fan. But yeah, you guys know better than I do, for sure. Okay, final question. You've raced against a lot of very, very good races. Obviously, all the whole W Series. Like races. I've got Jamie Chadwick's won it 3 times, and you mentioned your teammate Fabian Walwend, and we've got Alice Powell, who's obviously doing very well, one of the Brits. Abby Polling's come on and has done very well. But you raced against people like Devlin DiFrancesco. It's a long word at this time of night. You got like Carl and like Carl Kirkwood and a few others. I mean, are there any that stand out as being the best racer that you've raced against?
I think like every driver has different strengths. So like, but I would say the best all around driver that I've ever raced against would probably be Kyle Kirkwood. In like in a karting situation, I think like there's a fellow named Paolo De Canto, absolutely amazing. And I guess it wasn't an actual pro series on the track. I have raced against Max, but it was like in go-karts. So obviously he is the best. So those would probably be the ones I would mention.
Yeah, excellent. I'm glad you said Carl Kirkwood because obviously he's done very well in IndyCar this year. I think for his first season in the car he's been in. And
he's a really great like all-around racer. I feel like he's got the pace. He's smart enough to not make some choices, and he's got good racecraft. So I think he's set up for success this next year.
Excellent, good stuff. Yeah, same. I probably agree. Yeah, with regards to this year, definitely want to watch. Right, we've taken over an hour and a half of your time. That wasn't the plan, but thank you very much for sticking with us and for coming and having a chat. It's been great speaking with you, hearing all your thoughts on W Series F1 Academy and your stories and your recovery. So yeah, thank you very, very much for coming on and having a chat. It's been most enjoyable.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
Good. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you to everyone who's tuned in for the comments and everything. And yeah, we'll see you guys very soon. And yeah, Sabré, thank you very much once again. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Nice one. Good night, guys.